has lived in Darwin and has family connections to Tennant Creek, Fink, Alice Springs, and across the Central Desert area. Neil is here with us today and going to be sharing his story about diabetes, dialysis, and transplant. Can everyone please welcome Neil to the stage? Ready? We good?
La. Yes.
Okay, so welcome, Neil. Tell us who you are and where you're from.
So as you know, my name's Neil. I'm 42 years of age. I'm a Warramunga Walmampa literature man with Irish, English, and Welsh blood. I grew up with mum, dad, and two sisters. And I currently work as a patient mentor navigator with Purple House and involved in some projects with Menzies.
Cool, thanks. So can you tell us a bit about your diabetes story? What age were you diagnosed with diabetes and what type of diabetes do you have?
So in 1983, at the age of 18 months old is when I was diagnosed. And that was due to a virus. My immune system, while trying to fight the virus, attacked my pancreas, stopped it from producing the lipids.
And have you got a family history of diabetes?
No, my older sister got it when she was 17. We're the only two on both sides of the family with type 1.
Yeah, right. So leading up to you finding out about your diabetes diagnosis, how long did you live with type 1?
31 years.
31 years. And in 1996, you had a fishing incident. Can you tell us a bit about that story?
Yeah, so 15 years old, me and my mates went fishing. One of them threw a fish at me, so I kicked it. Like I was trying to kick for 50-meter goal, but anyway, within 3 days later, I noticed my foot had swelled up, redness, and had to be admitted to hospital, where I had 2 surgeries done, and then 22 sessions of hyperbaric to help heal the foot.
And what's hyperbaric, just for those that don't know?
Where you just take in pure oxygen. A lot of the athletes do it as well to heal quicker.
So you spoke about your management of diabetes. So can you just tell me a bit about that when you're on the one needle?
Yeah. So all the way through primary school, I was only on 1 needle a day. I was on Act Rapid and Monotard, and I don't even know if those insulins exist anymore. I doubt it, but we were just going by what my pediatrician was telling us to do. So for up until the age of 15, one needle a day. The management was poor. Not our fault. We're just going by what the GP told us, or the pediatrician.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until 1996, being admitted into hospital with the foot infection, that I was then under the care of Dr. Di Howard and to manage the diabetes.
So things changed from that point when you met Di?
Yes.
And she got your diabetes controlled, changed your medication. Do you want to talk a bit about that?
Yeah, so when I was admitted, the overall HbA1c was 15. She put me on, she was actually surprised I was only on the 1 needle for so long. So then I started having 4 needles, better management, more BSLs to be done. And then it dropped down to 11 within 1.5 years. But at the time as well, she'd found out I had hypertension as well. And there was already damage done to the kidneys. So the type 1 diabetes and the hypertension, two of the main causes of kidney failure. Yay.
So Di predicted that you'd start dialysis.
Yep. She said that because I asked her, well, how long do you think I've got till I'm on dialysis? She said probably the age of 30.
And how did that make you feel?
I still had 15 years left. That was the positive side of things, yeah. Run amok for 15 years. But no, well, yeah, just.
So then you started dialysis. How was that process? Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so at the age of 29, I was working at the hospital as one of the ALOs on the renal ward as well. So I had that background knowledge of what was about to happen. Plus, I've always prepared myself ready for the complications from the type 1 diabetes. Commenced on the 7th of June, 3 days after my 29th birthday. So she almost got it right. And yeah, started dialysis. They had to put a line in, and 3 days a week, 5 hours a day.
And can you tell us about the impacts of that? So it affected your work?
Yeah, the most thing that hit me hard the most was it felt like I wasn't fully independent anymore. Yeah, going from working full time to then
Being stuck in
a chair, yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about the situation when your blood pressure dropped?
Yeah, so 2012, sitting in the chair, just felt like I was going to sleep. I was really tired. It was handover at the time, so there was only one nurse on the floor, and she happened to be outside. And anyway, she'd walked in, noticed I was, moving around and sort of uneasy. She asked me if I was all right. I said, yeah, just feeling tired, like I'm going to pass out. And anyway, she checked the blood pressure. It was 62/36 and continued to drop. So she's hitting the buzzer. The next thing I knew, nurses all around me, the defibrillators there. And like I was just going to sleep, everything went dark. And I had that experience of going up to heaven or whatever you might want to call it. And then, yeah, when I woke up, they had told me
What
that.
did Jesus say to you?
He said to me, "What the hell are you doing here? You meant to go down there." But he's the one that sent me up there. Yeah.
Sorry.
He said, "What are you doing here? You got ID?" No. Yeah, that's $20 entry fee too. No, so when I'd opened my eyes, they told me that I died in the chair because of the thing, and that instead of taking the fluid out, they started to pump it back into me. And then there's 3 cups of tea, 3 cups of water, and I'm like, well, Jesus Christ, what was the point of me getting on the machine when you're pumping it all back into me? But they took 4 liters off and didn't realize that I was putting weight on. So they thought it was fluid. And then I started thinking, well, damn, because I used to work there and a few people had crashed as well and passed. Then I started thinking, well, is that what they were doing as well by accident, by mistake? It took my confidence and trust level in them from here down to here.
Yeah, right. So in 2013, you got an amazing phone call. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Oh, yeah. That was from Sarah, but no, hang on. That's different. Yeah. Yes. 3rd of January 2013, 7 a.m. in the morning. Got me out of bed to find out the news that the transplant nurse in Westmead Hospital, Sydney, said there's a kidney and pancreas here waiting for you. I said, well, send it up. No, he said, so can you come down? I was like, yeah, no worries, let me know when. And then I went down there and had the transplant.
And then what?
Well, so by the time I got on the plane, it was 3:30.
No, go back. So when you had the transplant, what happened on the table?
Yeah. So had the transplant done, took 5.5 hours. Anyway, on one occasion there, I was waiting to get a dressing done. I was in one of the bays. The curtain was drawn around me, and the nurse's station was literally just outside my bay. And I heard the doctor approach the nurse's station asking for my file. And she said, I'll say, he's the guy from Darwin. And obviously I heard the nurse say, yeah, that's the wanker. And then I heard her say, is he the one that died on the operating table? And I think the nurse was trying to signal to her, shh, he's just there. Yeah. So anyway, when she came in, I asked her about it. And her response was, there was a little hiccup. But other than that, everything went all right. And then when I tried to, find out more what happened, well, you'll have to speak to your surgeons about that. I wasn't in the room. I thought, all right, no worries.
So Jesus kicked you out a second time.
A second time, I know.
So what keeps you strong? Thinking about your family, your mum, the support.
Yeah, just being positive all the time, because, for every negative, there's a positive. You always look for the positive. And as a kid growing up, primary school was I struggled a bit there. I mean, the kids were good, all my classmates and everything. But because I was only on that one needle, I just felt like crap a lot of the time. Like on average, I probably had 40 days off of school. And I used to say to mum, dad, why me? Why did I have to get this? Yeah. And mum would always say to me, just remember there's someone worse off. You can still do everything everyone else can do. So I just looked for the positive in everything. And the first thing, obviously, acceptance. So accept what was thrown at me, process it, focus on what I have to do to either make it better or fix it. And that's how I've always had that mindset. Yeah.
Deadly. So just in closing, last question. You are a mentor to other dialysis patients and those wanting to go for transplant. Can you just quickly talk about your role there and how you support other men?
Yeah, so there's 4 of us men that have gone down the same journey. And now we help Indigenous patients on dialysis going down that same journey as well, help to empower them, encourage them to go for transplant. Because when we first started, that was our main goal, was getting the percentage up for Indigenous patients transplanted. On that mental well-being side, RAC, the Renal Advisory Advocate Committee, was started by my fellow colleagues back in 2012, but then stopped. And then we've just restarted again earlier this year, where the patients can come in a comfortable environment with no clinicians and discuss openly and freely about any issues and complications they may be having while on dialysis. And then we work from there then with them. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Neil.
All right, thank you for having me.
Okay, next lived experience speaker is Norlisha Bartlett. So Norlisha is a Bardi and Jabba Jabba woman from the Kimberley. Norlisha is my co-worker, my partner in crime, but we are each other's biggest support, and most of all, she is my sister. I want to acknowledge Norlisha's strength today to be able to stand here and talk and share her lived experience with family suicide, mental health, and the issues and barriers navigating the mental health system. Before I hand over to Norlisha, I'd like to acknowledge our family here in the room today, up the back there. I told your mom to sit down here. And those online and those who can't be here with us today. So Uncle Ramley, Auntie Kerry, Rahim, Zal, Kamisa, I'd like to thank you for allowing and supporting Norlisha to share this family story with us all here today.
Make me cry before I start. That's a good start. Thanks, Sian. So good morning, everyone. My name is Leitisha Bartlett, and today I'll be presenting on my lived experience with mental health and suicide. This is a heavy topic, so bear with me, please. Disclaimer also for other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in the room and online that there will be pictures of deceased people in this presentation. Am I going backwards? Let's go. I should be used to this. Okay. I am a Bardi and Jabba Jabba woman from the West Kimberley. I am a wife and a mother to 3 beautiful children. I was born in Broome and I come from a large family, 14 siblings, 7 boys and 6 girls. My first experience of suicide was when my young uncle passed away at the age of around 16. And following this, a couple of years later, my neighbour again, aged around 16, committed suicide in her home. Unfortunately, we were the ones who witnessed the aftermath. I then began to learn very quickly that this was becoming a common situation in my community, and I witnessed the effects on not only myself, but the impacts on the families and the wider community. And unfortunately, according to the latest Australian Institute of Health and Welfare Suicide and Self-Harm report, the Kimberley has the second highest rate in Australia, sitting at 31.9 deaths per 100,000 people. I want to share my story with you today about suicide, which has impacted my family, not only once, but 3 times, 3 brothers. From my perspective as their sister, I began to notice the impacts of mental health in their lives early on. Their situation was compounded further due to taking various substances as a coping mechanism to live with the impacts of mental health. Aslan struggled with substance abuse and was sent to prison for drug offences in 2008 at the age of 18 and spent 3 years in prison. This was his first time in prison, and his experience was so traumatic that he vowed to us, his family, when he got out, that he would never ever go back in. Kamsani was in and out of the prison system from a very young age. During his time in prison, he was diagnosed with personality disorder. Kamsani had voluntarily presented himself to the local hospital emergency 3 times in the week that he had passed. On the 18th of July, 2011 was the day that our family experienced suicide firsthand, when my brother Aslan committed suicide at the age of 23. Our whole world was shattered and we would never ever be the same again. It was hard for us to comprehend, and we had questions of why and how this could happen to our family. It took us years to live with this loss, but not completely. On December the 16th, 2015, our family received devastating news. My older brother, Kamsani, died in Broome Regional Prison at the age of 36 years. Again, another hit, another Black Death custody. This news turned our family worlds upside down. Again, how could this happen? I just want to flag with you all that we, the family, were unaware that Kamsani was in the prison system at the time. I also want to highlight the inappropriate form of communication on how the news was delivered back to my family. This story begins with an Aboriginal liaison officer offering his condolences to my older brother who was in a Perth prison. My brother's reaction was, who? Who are you talking about? The liaison officer then realised he had just delivered confidential information to which none of the family were yet to be informed. This triggered my brother with questions and searching for answers in the system, but also within the family 2,000 kilometres away. It took our family 2 hours to find out whether our brother was dead or alive. Dad, who was on the mines in the Pilbara at the time, was saying, no, maybe this is a mistake. Maybe the officers have got it all wrong. And I commented, yeah, maybe they've got the wrong family. This also highlights how fast news travels even when you're in prison. Talk about blackfellow grapevine. Because Kamsani had passed away from suicide in prison, a coronial inquest was undertaken 3 years after he passed. Being present at this inquest made us relive the day that he died all over again. Dad and I, along with my sisters, spent 3 days at the courthouse hearing evidence from corrections, and Serco, as no one wanted to take responsibility for the situation which occurred in their system. Both had a duty of care to my brother, and as a consequence, this duty of care ultimately failed my brother. From this inquest, 6 recommendations were provided, including to improve the need of mental health assessments on entry to prison. In 2019, our younger brother, who never recovered from the loss of Aslan, and then struggled immensely with the loss of Kamsani, began to struggle with his own mental health. He had attempted suicide several times, in which we as a family intervened. We were able to get him admitted to the local mental health unit until he withdrew from the effects of methamphetamine. My younger sister, Kamisa, drove to Broome to be with him and was able to come up with a mental health plan and work with support services to address substance abuse and mental health issues. It wasn't an easy ride from there, and there were many ups and downs over the next couple of years. Our families were always holding our breath as we watched him spiral and tried to intervene. In 2021, Chadeen seemed to be hitting rock bottom, and then at the request of his then partner, we were asked to step in as she was exhausted and felt like she wasn't getting anywhere with either the local health system and police. My sister Zalma visited in October. She sat with him. She stated to him the reality of the situation, the decline of his mental health, and tried to come up with a plan of which services he would be okay contacting. Plans were put in place and services were aligned, and he seemed to be relieved and happy to engage. The plan was to keep attending these services and in 3 months' time come to Darwin for a little break. In the weeks following, we were concerned because we knew Chad was fragile, hoping that he would continue. 2 weeks later, he got 2 appointments, outreach and mental health mixed up. This triggered him. He gave up, stating it was too hard to keep up with all these appointments. Then COVID hit and WA hard border requirements were enforced. We knew that this would hit him hard and that he would spiral, which he did. We were then in daily contact with his partner in Broome, our father in Perth, waiting to hear updates on how he was and not knowing how we could help. Chad slowly stopped working. He stopped seeing his young son. He isolated himself and his drug taking had escalated. Chad was starting to show all the main signs of suicide. 2 weeks prior to Chad committing suicide, he sent messages to his partner and to my sister saying that he knows he is going soon. He can feel it. His time is coming. During this time, my sister Zal and I were on the phone to the police and the mental health unit every day to figure out a way in which we could help him. I would deal with the police for the first instance of his safety, and once we were at the hospital, which sometimes took hours, my sister would then deal with the mental health unit. These are just some of the quotes from health professionals working in the mental health space and the emergency department, and these were the messages that were given to my family. We were told by health professionals not to come and get him. we were advised that if we came, we would be only enabling his behaviour as he did not have a mental health issue. We felt at this time that our voices were not being listened to and our opinions were dismissed as they could only go on his behaviour at his presentation. Given the history of our family and previous suicides, we were very explicit with the severity of the situation. This was not an imagined fear because we had already lived through this twice and we were trying everything in our power to prevent this happening for a third time. By this stage, we were desperate and we were begging and pleading with the mental health professionals and police to help us. 4 days later, Chad committed suicide in his home. Again, a family member were the ones who witnessed the aftermath. Now, I'd be lying if I stood up here and said that my mental health hasn't affected me over the years, especially with these 3 traumas. The grief hit hard the third time, but I knew that there were things that I needed to do to stay on top of my own mental health. And this included a holistic approach, included culturally and spiritually, seeking professional medical advice, counselling, nutrition, fitness, and my main support, my family who are in the room today. A huge contributor to my mental health is the support that I have received from my colleagues and my biggest supporter, Sian. If it wasn't for them, I don't think I would have been able to return to work following the death of Chad. Also, having purpose in my work, going back to community and being on country has played a huge part of my healing, along with teaching and mentoring the next generation of leaders. So this was hard for me to get up here and share my story with you all today. As you can tell, it's not an easy story to tell. However, we need to take these opportunities to promote mental health as there is a huge stigma attached to it. I believe we need to use these platforms to break down the stigma and silence surrounding the crisis that many Indigenous families and communities are living in. I will continue to speak for the voices that can't speak anymore. Thank you.
Silence is good after that. Thank you, Norlisha, for that presentation. Next up, we're good. Okay, so I'm honoured to be introducing our next lived experience speaker. So Mr. Ben Mack, who is an Aboriginal man from Alice Springs. Ben will be presenting on his journey with chronic disease and now to living well. Please welcome Ben to the stage.
Thank you, Sian. I'm honoured to be introducing, sorry, I'm reading yours. Sian setting me up.
Sorry.
Start again. Righto. Hello, everyone. My name is Ben. Before commencing, I would like to acknowledge the Larrakia people of whose land we meet upon today. I'm truly honoured and humbled to be presenting in your beautiful country. I myself hail from Mbandwa, Central Australia. I'm a 43-year-old male of the Aranda and Arabana tribes. I was born and bred in Alice Springs. I'm Aranda on my mother's side and Arabana on my father's. I also have English, Irish, Scottish, and Italian blood. I want to talk briefly about health. That is something that I'm truly passionate about. But first, I have a couple of questions for those of you in attendance today. You do not have to answer. You're not obligated. Can I have a show of hands of those in the crowd that have type 2 diabetes? Can I have a show of hands for those that are dealing with thyroid disease? Can I have a show of hands of anyone dealing with obstructive sleep apnea or high blood pressure? Show of hands of those dealing with depression or anxiety. These types of illnesses are rife within our community. They are rife within our country, and they are rife all over the world. Please don't feel as though you are alone. You're not. In fact, each of these illnesses I just named, I myself have had to deal with, and I'm still dealing with to some degree. I'm here to share with you briefly how I came to realization in the hope that I can instill some kind of belief or realization within each of you, so that if you are dealing with one or more of these illnesses, or know of someone dealing with these illnesses, to seek help. Recovery is attainable. Realization. Can anyone give me the definition of that word? It's one of my favorites. An act of becoming fully aware of something as a fact. Similar words include awareness, understanding, comprehension, consciousness, apprehension, appreciation, recognition, perception, discernment. The achievement of something desired or anticipated. Actualization, fulfillment, achievement, accomplishment, attainment. How was I able to come to realization? I met with doctors, GPs, psychologists, and even a psychiatrist at one point in time. I was sick and I needed help, so I met with the professionals. However, I came to realize one thing after numerous meetings with these health professionals: they could not fix me, not for these types of illnesses anyway. That was my job. They could only give me the tools to commence the rebuilding phase of my path to healing. I started out educating myself through reading books and health magazines. I've always loved reading and writing for that matter. English was my favorite subject at school. So I figured I need to use this to my advantage if I were going to heal. That was one tool I had already obtained long before these diseases took control. We all have certain tools at our disposal that we can apply in times of need. What tools do you have? Think about it. Education was my go-to. I started out noting everything that I felt was of importance and disregarded the rest. The more I read, the more I was able to equip myself with the right tools to conquer these illnesses. I came to learn what foods to eat. I came to learn what foods to fuel my body. I came to learn what foods I had to avoid. I came to learn I had to eat less and move more. I came to learn that time alone was imperative. I had to embrace solitude and steer clear of the crowds for extended periods if I were going to reach my goals. By disconnecting from the social norms of going out, partying, getting drunk, stuffing my face with copious amounts of junk food, I was able to reconnect with my true self. Upon reconnecting with self, I was then able to reconnect with others congruently, in harmony, healthily. I could now sit one-on-one or in a group and listen attentively, because there was no longer the background noise of judgmental internal dialogues or exaggerated misconceptions by the incessant thoughts of the overthinking brain. At this point, I have obtained mental clarity. Paradoxically, I had developed a tough exterior by creating a meek interior. That is to say, softer externally and stronger intrinsically, which leads me to two famous paradox quotes that may help you better understand my current position. I have found the paradox that if you love until it hurts, there can be no more hurt, only love. Mother Teresa. And the paradox of trauma is that it has both the power to destroy and the power to transform and resurrect. Peter A. Levine. I approach this journey to healing via strength-based practice. A strength-based approach is a way of working that focuses on abilities, knowledge, and capacities rather than deficits or things that are lacking. The approach recognises that individuals are resilient and capable of growth, learning, and change. To reunify mind and spirit, I was compelled to reconnect body with nature. I walked, I rode, I ran. I went to the gym and spent hours, days, weeks, months, and years navigating country. My ancestors always watching, guiding my every move. I knew that this was the easy part though. The hard part was cleaning up my diet, or the way I ate rather, and more importantly, how much I'd consumed. Not only was this about the consumption of energy via calories though, it had a lot to do with the energy ingested mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. I came to learn that my external environmental disposition had a lot to do with what was going on internally. How does one start the journey to healing though, when one is so conditioned to their environmental disposition, be it not so healthy? How much of a role does our external environment play in determining how our internal environment and systems function? How does one change that level of thinking from not knowing to knowing? Again, I spoke with people. I conversed with the professionals. I spoke with others who could identify with my story and whose stories I could relate to. I read books and applied what I'd learned through those teachings to my regimens and programs to see what worked and what didn't. I eliminated certain foods that were no good and introduced foods that would have fueled my engine both physically and mentally. Once I'd equipped myself with the right tools, I'd spend long periods in solitude so that I could focus on the goal and getting the results that would ultimately lead to my healing. I spoke with other healthcare professionals that practiced a more holistic approach, naturopaths offering natural remedies. I found there was always someone that I could learn from. I found that there was always someone that could teach me something. However, the only person that could heal me was me. My name is Ben Mack. 12th of June, 1980, my being was brought into existence. I'm a survivor of childhood trauma. I'm a survivor of diabetes, thyroid disease, and high blood pressure. I'm a survivor of chronic obstructive sleep apnea, alcoholism, depression, and anxiety. I have survived things that have and still continue to kill people worldwide every single day. I'm here today to share with you my story of realization. I'm here to share with you the evidence of that realization. I'm here to encourage those that are dealing with these same types of illnesses to reach out not only to the healthcare professionals, but people that can identify with your story. I'm here to encourage each and every one of you to become more present with yourself more than anything. By doing so, you're able to become more present with others. Today, I've invited, back to that. It all starts out with developing a better understanding of our past traumas, because once we're able to heal as children, we're able to thrive as grown folk. If the next generation are to thrive as elders in future, we as elders need to recover now. Time to break the cycle. It starts with me. It starts with we, you and I. This is breaking the transgenerational cycle. Today, I've invited Thomas, my eldest son, to come along today to share with you our experience and understand the importance of breaking this cycle of chronic disease and diabetes. Thank you.
On the panel, yeah. Thanks, Ben. So that's a drop the mic ending to that session. I'd now like to show you a video. Give me a second. So set on beautiful Aranda country and told through the stories of Robert and Ben, we will start the video, please. apologies for the technical issues we're having here today. Do you want to just start with questions and we'll come back to the video? Or is that it? Oh, cool.
When I was first diagnosed with diabetes, well, I was always pretty big, playing footy in my young junior days. So I used to sweat a lot and my eyesight was blurry, you know.
I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes in 2010. I was drinking alcohol and very, very sugary soft drinks, smoking cigarettes, and I had a lot of takeaway food at that point as well. But what I didn't realise was that that comfortable lifestyle was leading me down a path of sickness.
The doctor told me that I had diabetes. When I walked out the door, I was thinking, no, I'm not going to listen to the white doctor who told me what to do. Back when I was young, I was ashamed of my life, you know, because diabetes wasn't being spoken about much when we was growing up as a child, as a kid.
I was warned by the doctors that if I kept up with my old ways that I would end up with diabetes. Then I didn't listen. I found that I didn't have as much energy, I was sleeping more, and the defining moment came when I almost lost my toes. My toes got really badly affected. I couldn't understand why. I didn't even think about the diabetes.
Growing up as a child, I always looked at my father as a hard-working man. He worked hard all his life, you know, and that's one thing I look back on. When I left school at the age of 16 and a half, I worked on my life, you know. And I was thinking, you know, I want to prove my grandfather and my father right, you know. Like I can take after them, I want to take their footsteps. And over the years, then it worked into, like, you know, when you go and look for work, you got to work on your diabetes and your mental health state as well. So it all rolled together as one, you know.
Basically, it was just a motivation thing, but I knew that the only person that could make that change was me. And I'm the sort of person that when I set my mind to something, I will not stop until I reach that goal. So for me, in order to get on top of these illnesses, I did things that I enjoyed. I went outside, I went for walks, and I bought a new bike, and I started riding my bike, and I went swimming. And then the support from friends, you know, who I'd spoken to about wanting to make this change and wanted to get back in shape. I had friends come around and say, let's go for a walk, or let's go for a run, you know. Stick with the friends that were there to support my health journey.
I started eating healthy, just a lot of vegetables. Yeah, my missus helped me on that journey from all the home-cooked meals, no more takeaway. I used to live off takeaway pretty bad. When I started losing weight, I started feeling stronger and better. And yeah, I'm very proud of myself, how far I've come with my life, you know, now, today. And, yeah, well, I got good support, you know. The diabetes educators as well, and this particular doctor helped supported me through my journey, and I felt like we had a bond together, you know, from a little thing to big things grow, and that's how me and that doctor got on.
Being on country and training means everything to me. It's where I belong, it's where my spirit belongs. It's about me staying connected not only with country but to my ancestors, going back and appreciating what has been left behind for us and how much we have, but how much work we still have to do in looking after country as well as ourselves. That's what keeps me strong physically as well. We need to start out with educating one another. We need to sit down, we need to start having serious, real conversations with one another and really get serious about life. Really get serious about these diseases, and by having these conversations and talking about it, we're able to show people that they have the power to be able to get on top of these diseases rather than these diseases get on top of them.
I don't want my son to go down on that same road that I went down, and I teach him all the time. You know, no sugary drinks, no takeaway, just try to make him healthy, you know. I just want to steer them in the right direction. Life is too short to leave things too late. You're only young, you can hit the nail on the head now and work on your health, your eating, your drinking, your mental state, and your family. So please, don't be ashamed. Be good. Go seek help.
Okay, that was a deadly video. Just in terms of time, we probably have enough time for 1 or 2 questions for the panel. Ben and Thomas, did you want to come up? Does anyone have any questions? No questions. Okay, the guys will be around anyway at lunchtime, so if anybody wants to have a conversation. Thomas, did you want to say something? Sorry to put you on the spot.
I'd like to ask you a question. Thomas, I think thank you firstly to everyone for your stories and for sharing all of your experiences. Thank you. Thomas, it would be really great just to hear from you around some of the inspiration that you've had from your dad. We've heard his incredible journey and what that's meant for you, particularly in, I assume, in living a healthy, stronger life than you otherwise may have.
Well, when I was a lot younger, when I was about 9, I've been going down the same path my dad had. I've been gotten really comfortable with just bad food, bad drinks, bad living habits, all that. And he saw that, and I was just whatever. But he was like, So my dad had asked if he had wanted me to join him on some of his exercise routines, and I said, sure, why not? Thought it'd be fun. It was not. It was very painful, but he had assured me that it would all be worth it, and eventually it was. He had ended up putting me through a 12-week program that I'd gone the entirety of the way of, and out of it I became much more tough-skinned. My mental fortitude definitely increased a lot. And now I've been looking at myself a lot and been doing the same thing my dad's been, just not really going to parties, been just spending time with myself, figuring out who I am, what I want to do. And that's been going really well so far. It's kind of just gotten me here, where I'm just sitting at this panel with my dad, all that. But yeah, that's really about it.
Okay, can we put our hands together for all of the panel?
Before you all disappear, I just want to say thank you. Just really quickly, Danielle, thank you so much for sharing. Sharing personal stories is really can be quite hard. And you're doing a good job with that.
Hey, is this a check for $1 million?
Ben? Thank you also. Greatly appreciate it. And of course, Norlisha, thank you. So next up, we have a panel discussion with social and emotional wellbeing experts. So I'll introduce each of our 4 panel members, and as I do, please come up and take a seat at the front here. So firstly, we've got Dr. Josie Povey, who's a Menzies Research Fellow and Darwin Site Lead for the AIM Higher project. Josie is part of the Stay Strong program, which develops, tests and trains in innovative strength-based approaches to mental health treatment. Leitisha Jackson, where's Leitisha? There you are, is from Katherine and currently employed in the Katherine Mental Health Service and is a registered Aboriginal health practitioner in alcohol and other drugs and mental health. Leitisha does outreach in community, providing acute care and opportunistic screening, and supports Worley with their youth type 2 diabetes group. So it's great to have you here, Leitisha. Penny Reu is a social worker and senior mental health clinician in the Headspace Early Psychosis program. She was born in Alice Springs and grew up in the Territory. She has experience in youth work and community work and has worked in Headspace centres in Melbourne and Darwin for the past 2 years. And last but not least, we have Tayloraye Bailey, who's from Katherine, where she grew up most of her life. Tayloraye is currently working at Headspace as a vocational peer support worker through lived experience. She supports other young people who are experiencing mental health challenges that inhibit one's work and study goals. Tayloraye loves being involved with the community through different groups such as the GS Social Club and Rotaract Young Professional NT. Thank you all for being here. I will open up with one question, and then I really do encourage others online and here in person to fire away as you feel appropriate. So there are microphones there. You guys are all good. My first question is to Leitisha. So Leitisha, we understand that being connected to culture has a positive influence on mental health and wellbeing. How are you, in your role, able to support clients in a way that respects and promotes their culture? And what opportunities do you see within the health system to do this better?
Hello everyone, my name's Leitisha. I've been an Aboriginal health practitioner for 16 years. So when I see an individual in a consult with me, culture is, everyone has their own different cultures. So how do I explain it? Empower them to practice what they need to do for themselves as an individual. So I always look at them, okay, someone's coming into this consult now, I need to look at it like a blank canvas. They're telling me their story today, not about what I think they need to do, but what they need to do for themselves. So us having those little conversations about culture, about anything, looking at them in a holistic approach. All these conversations that I've heard all this morning, that's the kind of stuff that I want to talk to you about today, but we've touched on some of those things like the social determinants of health. We need to help. And I don't even know if I'm making sense, I'm just blabbering on now, but because it's a lot, my mind's just, that question, it's so in depth, my mind's just going, how do I keep it short and sweet? But it's not my story, it's their story. So I need to help them make informed decisions and empower them to make the right choices for themselves. So those little brief interventions that we have about food, about housing, about anything that they present with that day, you help them make that decision for themselves. Because at the end of the day, like you said, it's that individual's choice. Everyone has choices. So it's you just making them realize that they can do whatever they set their mind to.
Great, thank you. Any questions from the audience? I have got questions. I might fire away with my next one then on that note. I think it would be nice to go to Josie at this point to think about the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Mental Health Initiative, the Aim High project, which has developed a range of tools for service providers working with First Nations people and community to promote resilience and to provide strategies to address contributors to mental illness. So picking up on some of the things that we've just heard from Leitisha. Which of the tools from the Aim High toolkit would you recommend to support practitioners working with clients and chronic diseases such as diabetes?
Thank you, Renee. I actually cheated. I brought some notes with me because I knew my question beforehand. So this is quite nerve-wracking, but bear with me. So as Renee said, we have a number of resources that have been developed with community around mental health and wellbeing. And all of our tools are actually underpinned by what we call a Stay Strong approach. So this is, the tools have been designed essentially to promote engagement, to improve communication, and to provide a strengths-based approach to a conversation around mental health. So all of our tools are yarning tools. They are about promoting a conversation about 4 steps to change. So the first of those steps is talking about family, talking about the people in our lives that help to keep us strong, identifying what their role are, what that person's role is to them and the other way. And then moving on to talking about strengths. So what are the things in a person's life that keep them strong? And Ben has provided an amazing array of all the activities that he does, that help to keep him strong in his life as well. The third step is around identifying worries. So things in that person's life that are worries for them at that point. And that comes into the social determinants of health and all those other factors that can impact and that we know impacts on wellbeing for people. And the last step is around thinking about goals and steps for change. So, thinking about all the good things and the good people in your life, what are some goals and steps for change for you? This approach has been used in a very wide range of services, including chronic disease. And I think for me, it's really important to recognise that that holistic approach to chronic disease management is actually in itself a mental health treatment. So, all the tools that we have are based on low intensity cognitive behavioural therapy. They're based on brief interventions and also motivational interviewing. So, simply a conversation around exploring strengths and exploring the things that you do in your life that keep you strong is actually stepping towards creating a self-management plan around either diabetes or mental health and wellbeing. And they can actually coexist as a treatment both together. So we have a range of tools. So you asked specifically about tools. We have a range of tools that support that approach. And if anyone's interested, myself and Ali are here today. We've got a stall outside to guide you through some of those tools, but we have the Stay Strong app. We have a youth version of the Stay Strong app, and we have what we call a Stay Strong plan as well, which is a paper-based resource which follows those 4 steps. All are available on the Menzies website, and we do offer free training for organisations or people who are interested in hearing more and learning about that approach as well.
Thanks, Josie. A very quiet audience. But if no one else is jumping in, I will ask Penny as a clinician, how is it that you support some of your clients to prevent and manage their chronic conditions?
Yeah, so, oh, sorry, that's very loud. I work in our early psychosis team at Headspace. So we're often having conversations around diabetes because antipsychotic medication can sometimes be a cause of diabetes. So I think the most important thing is for us giving people the information and knowledge around that. I think often in days past, people would be prescribed that medication without much knowledge around what the potential side effects or risks could be. But I think, yeah, giving that choice and empowerment to make decisions around medications and that sort of thing and what the potential risks will be, and then also providing support around monitoring going forward. We do a lot of metabolic monitoring to just see where people are at and I guess keep it a dynamic sort of relationship with the medication, always just checking in to see how it's going. And I think in regards to more broadly chronic illness, it's often really important to be really creative in the approach that you take and be able to offer people choices about how they engage with the service, because it's not always easy to make it for a set appointment time, and depending on what's going on for you outside of that. So a lot of it can be going out to meet people at their houses or in a place that feels comfortable to them, and yeah, being able to engage with families as well, so that it's not just that individual and you're not just looking at the mental health difficulties that are happening, but also their family group, their community, and the other things that are happening for them, whether it is their physical health or what things they like doing. We use the Stay Strong resources quite a bit for that sort of thing, so thank you, Josie. But yeah, I think just being really flexible and meeting the young person where they're at is important for us in doing that.
Thanks, Penny. Oh, an online question, great. Could you please read it out, Olivia?
Do you often use a family-based approach in your practice? Do you find this approach effective, and how do you go about engaging with the family?
Yeah, we see family work as really, really important, especially because often we'll only see someone for, you know, an hour a fortnight or maybe even an hour a month. Their families are with them all the time. So it just makes sense. And we know that mental health outcomes are better if families are engaged and involved, and, you know, have the, I guess, have the choices and empowerment to be involved, rather than just seeing the young person as they themselves. So we do have a family worker who can work specifically with families. He also has a lived experience of being a family member supporting someone with a mental health difficulty, which is really helpful. And we do have a social emotional wellbeing worker as well, who can engage with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander families. The way that we kind of do that as a team is often we will take out either the family worker or the social emotional wellbeing worker on outreach visits with a clinician also, to kind of build those relationships and just sit down and have a cuppa or provide some information about, you know, psychosis or whatever it is that's happening. And yeah, the clinicians in our team, I guess, even if we're not engaging that specific worker, yeah, we all kind of really value having the input of families and friends and chosen families as well. Yeah, so does that answer all the parts of that question? Yeah.
Can I just pull in there or draw in around, so you've just highlighted the importance of family support for a lot of people. We heard this morning from Alison and Jackie in Manitoba that they've got a patient advocacy group, and so they really spoke about the importance of peer support for young people with type 2 diabetes. That's something that we've found here in our work in youth type 2, that young people really value peer support. And so this is where I think, Tayloraye, it's really great to have you here to give your insights around your role, and to tell us a little bit about how you use your lived experience to help other young people, and what advice you might give to organisations or services who want to employ peer support workers.
That felt like 3 questions.
I think you can totally manage it.
Yeah, so I'm a vocational peer worker, but I work alongside clinicians at Headspace and vocational specialists. So those are the people that help them with work and study support. So I'm sort of in a bit of a middle ground. And not only do I help young people that have challenges with mental health to re-engage in study and work, but I also just help young people with just their general mental health challenges. And I think just in the context of like chronic illnesses, sometimes people come into Headspace and they just focus on their mental health. And I question them, I'm like, how are you going with your physical health? And they sort of like, they stop for a second, you know, like they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, you know, how's your sleep? How you eating? How you doing that? Because sometimes we forget that physical health impacts our mental health and vice versa. And as a young person, you know, I've had them physical health problems, and I've gone to the other young people and been like, hey, like, have you checked in this way? And yeah, I think as peer support work is a very interesting space, because we're not a professional. We're a professional within our lived experience, and not like a social worker or a psychologist or psychiatrist. And so we get to sort of challenge mental health systems and be like, are you actually getting the support you need? And yeah, like, I guess because I've gone through mental health systems and I've had those lived experience, I get to connect with other young people being like, yeah, that stuff sounds challenging. And how can I help you as someone that's been in your shoes to get through what you've gone through? But yeah, I think, yeah. What was the other question? Sorry.
Around what advice would you give to other organisations around how to employ peer support workers and why that's important?
Yeah, it's a very hard space, because I think a lot of specialists, they're amazing, but sometimes they forget that like having that connection and that lived experience is so much more valuable sometimes than being professional. So they sort of they got to really open their mind to that stuff. And yeah, like, because we have lived experience doesn't mean that, yeah, we're broken. We're actually survivors and fighters within that space. And I think the first step is always having that voice. So like, whether it be a reference group of some kind, that's the first step, because there's always going to be someone out there that has that lived experience as an expert themselves, who can be able to support in finding a better solution or a better way of fixing something, or finding something that would work better on the ground than through the professional realm. So that's the first step, I reckon, for any organisation. Look for a reference group. Yeah.
We've got time for one or two quick questions if anyone has anything they would like to ask. How are we going online? No more questions. Oh yes, we've got 2 questions, 3 questions in the room. Great, okay.
This is a question for Leitisha. Question for Leitisha. I was just wondering if your work at Worley with the young people who have type 2 diabetes, are there specific or unique mental health issues that you see face that group of young people compared to the other young people that you may work with at Worley or in Catherine?
No, everybody I see is kind of having the similar issues. Yeah, so and I live in the community too, so it's kind of like I've faced those same issues growing up. So it's good to start having those conversations with the young ones, because myself personally growing up, conversations about diabetes and like on the video we was watching earlier, no one talks about it in the community. No one talks about, you know, or even praising the youth and what they've accomplished so far. Like that's not normal conversations you hear around the table at home. So it's good. Like I feel, you know, very proud to the young ones tell me all the time, I look up to you, you're a good role model. I want to be like you. I want to be a health worker too, you know. So that kind of makes me feel like I'm making an impact in my community. And I will forever continue to encourage these young ones to look after themselves and remember, like, stand up for what you believe in, even if others are against you. Because sometimes in our community, a lot of people like to say, this is culture, you give me this and take. And they expect you to give. But you can't do that all the time, especially when you go without them. So really encourage them to look after their mental health, that self-awareness. So, and having those hard conversations with them about, and realistic goal setting. Like you might be in an overcrowded house with 20 people there. How are you supposed to eat healthy when you're gonna just get family members cooking stew and rice and damper just to feed everybody? And they're not understanding carbohydrates in damper, having that rice, having that potato, starchy vegetables. You know, like if we're gonna make a change with diabetes, like we need to do better at preventative health and having those conversations with them about meal prep, food planning, budgeting. So like I said too before, and like we've all heard, those social determinants of health. But actually, if we're gonna have like, so this is what I have these conversations with these young ones, like about food security. If you want to eat a bit healthier, maybe get a fridge and have that in your room with a padlock. So you know, like you have to really think of outside of the box like that if you want them to eat healthier, because it's kind of hard as a health practitioner too, because I know, like we know as clinicians exactly, like we got frameworks around nutrition, we got frameworks about what exactly people should be doing with their lives. But realistically, you can't do that when you're the only individual in your household trying to make positive change and no one else is ready. There's a lot of addiction stuff happening, addiction and alcohol and other drugs. So me doing AOD and mental health now, like I was in the clinical setting for 15 years and I've only come into mental health and AOD recently. And it's the same stories over and over again. And it's because drug and alcohol you know, people are spending like, and hearing these youth are, they don't know where their next meal's coming from because their parents or other adults in the household are out spending their money. And another common thing that's happening in our community lately is that, so before, when they'd get paid, they have the basic card, the income managed basic card to give to whoever the person that's more responsible in the household. So they'll have basic card to buy food. But now, because of alcohol and drugs in the community, they're giving the people with alcohol and other drugs addictions, they're giving their basic cards to the taxi drivers, and the taxi drivers will give them cash for their basic card. So they'll give them $50 cash, and the taxi driver can spend $100 out of their money. So nothing at all now. And me having, like, as an Aboriginal health practitioner too, my job just doesn't stop at 4:20. Like, I'm getting family members coming to me after work. So I hear it all. I hear it on the phone, after work, in my consult. So I hear the same stories. Oh, no one's helping me in the house. I'm the only one trying to feed everybody. So it's really about that nutrition too, but we need to really look at how do we help people with addiction, because that's where all the money is going to. And then no one can't get their diabetes and their BGL controlled because there's no food in the house. So yeah, there's a lot of working with these youth. It's me about trying to have conversations with them now and getting them to change their way of thinking for themselves. Like, and it's not being selfish. Like, when you get your money, it's not being selfish, because a lot of family would say that to you, oh, you're being selfish, give me this, give me that. No, when you're saying no, it's okay. You know, you got to be compassionate towards yourself and start looking out for yourself too, because your family, like our family, need to start looking out for themselves. We can't be doing everything for them all the time. So it's having those little hard conversations with them and trying to get them to make better decisions for themselves, and always trying to encourage them to have that voice. Like, even if it's your auntie or uncle, you know, can we have this for dinner, or can we try and do this? Can I come shopping with you? So try and include them in those little activities too. And yeah.
Thank you so much. I hate to interrupt because all of that is incredibly important, and you've got an incredible voice there, Leitisha, and lots of really vital things to say. I think it's a really nice segue though into the next presentation, which is around the role of structural inequities in diabetes outcomes. So if everyone could join me in thanking the expert panel. Thanks so much. So the next presentation will be delivered by Sian and Louise together.
Thanks, everyone. So Sian and I, one of the highlights of our year this year was that we were invited to contribute as co-authors to 2 papers in a series published by The Lancet around diabetes or inequities related to diabetes. And we had the honour of presenting on behalf of all co-authors the first paper in the series at the American Diabetes Association meeting, which was in San Diego earlier this year in June. And Sian and I travelled there. It was the first time Sian had ever had a passport or left Australia. So it was quite an amazing experience for both of us. And we're sharing here today with you the presentation that, an abbreviated version of the presentation that we did in America about the first paper. So the first paper is entitled The Role of Structural Racism and Geographical Inequity in Diabetes Outcomes. And it involved authors from 4 continents around the world coming together, and we discussed particularly the critical role of social determinants of health in diabetes inequities across the globe in all of our regions, particularly looking at things like food insecurity, poverty, limited education and employment opportunities, structural racism and intergenerational trauma, all of things that we've been talking about today. So just first of all, some definitions that we came together to define across the group to be consistent definitions across all our regions of the world. So first of all, inequity is preventable differences in health outcomes closely linked to social, economic and environmental conditions. Minoritized are groups of people who have been historically marginalized and treated unequally or unjustly. Race is a social construct established for government classification systems. Structural racism is ways in which societies foster racial discrimination through mutually reinforcing systems of housing, education, employment, earnings, etc., and criminal justice and its influence on health. Geographical inequity relates to differences in world position, development, resources, and access between low and middle income countries and high income countries. Structural inequity we defined in this paper to be the effects of structural racism and geographical inequity together. So in this paper, we developed some theoretical frameworks connecting the social determinants of health with impacts on diabetes outcomes and inequities in diabetes outcomes. So the 5 key social determinants of health that we developed in theoretical frameworks are pictured here. So sociocultural norms, economic development, public awareness and policy, access to high quality care, and innovations in diabetes management, all then impacting on diabetes outcomes. So you can see on the right there, things like screening and diagnosis of diabetes, management of diabetes, life expectancy, quality of life, all different types of outcomes. This is one of the frameworks that we developed, and it talks about the cascade of widening inequity in diabetes. So you can see that on the x-axis is time across the bottom, and then on the y-axis are diabetes outcomes. So number 1 there is that there's structural inequity, which is that minoritized communities are starting at a more disadvantaged position and face more adverse diabetes outcomes than their non-minoritized counterparts due to structural inequity. And then number 2, over time, you have the influence of the structural inequity on the social determinants of health that drives increasing divergence in diabetes outcomes. And then in 3, you have the compound effects of structural inequity and social determinants of health across multiple generations, fueling a cascade of ever-widening global inequity in diabetes. So I'd now like to hand over to Sian Graham, who does not need introduction as she's already been here several times today. But it was critical to me that Sian was a key part of this opportunity in authoring these Lancet papers. Sian, with her lived experience of type 2 diabetes and inequities and structural racism. And she's going to share today some of her lived experience with you all and what we shared in America.
Thanks, Louise. Oh. Yeah, please. Okay. So today I'll be presenting on some of the common themes from across the regions, South Asia, Sub-Saharan Africa, United States and Australia, and share with you my lived experience. It's a real privilege to be here today and I also want to acknowledge all the other co-authors who contributed to this paper and allowed Louise and I to present this presentation to you all today. So diabetes is a huge problem for our people. Most often, we all have some connections to diabetes, whether that be at individual or through family members or family history. As an Aboriginal woman, I have been exposed to poor health outcomes through both my work environment and through family connection. Coming from a large Aboriginal family who have a strong history of chronic disease on both sides, I remember growing up seeing family members taking medication, injecting insulin and talking about diabetes. Growing up, diabetes was normalised. My diabetes journey began quite early when I fell pregnant with my first daughter in 2002. I was 17, living in a remote community, which was located 300 k's out of the nearest town. Due to the fact that we were quite remote and had no access to a car, I made the decision to move closer into town. In Australia, not many Aboriginal people have the option to move, and most often our people don't want to move from their communities, but have to in order to access better healthcare and services. So intergenerational risk was a common theme throughout the different regions and is a focus of our work here in Australia. In 2002, I was diagnosed with gestational diabetes, and this was controlled through diet. I progressed through this pregnancy and had a healthy baby who is now 20 years old. In 2005 and 6, I had another two who are sitting in the audience somewhere here. In both of these pregnancies, I had the OGTT, but they were both cleared for diabetes. However, as life progressed, in 2014, I was diagnosed with type 2. In 2018, I had a surprise baby. And on Friday, the 8th of March, we welcomed another girl. It's my role as their mum to prevent these girls from getting diabetes and walking the same path that I've had to. These girls have seen the impacts of diabetes not only on myself during pregnancy, but again, like myself, watching mum, aunties and nanas manage their diabetes. It's now my girls doing the same with us. This cycle of diabetes needs to stop with me. So in Australia, we have a health system that fails us. We have a westernised system that doesn't acknowledge our holistic approach to health. We do not connect with health systems and therefore we don't engage. The system is failing our people and as a consequence, we are dying. I've had many experiences of racism in the health system and there are so many that I can't detail with you today, but I will share one with you. So I attended the hospital endo clinic and I get called up by the registrar. There's no conversation, just straight into reading my notes, then proceeds to ask me about my logbook. I get into trouble because I forget to bring my logbook, which triggers the doctor to go into condescending mode, which triggers me to get defensive. Now, I don't want to engage. Many times I have been stereotyped and treated differently based on the way I look or by people's assumption of me. Racism needs to stop at all levels. We need to create opportunities for better health outcomes for our people living with diabetes. And this is not just Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, it's everybody living with diabetes. We need to create a positive change within health services to enable safe and culturally appropriate access within health systems. This needs to happen at a national and international level. Food security was another common theme in USA, Asia and Africa. Food security and the high cost of fresh food remains substantially high, let me start that again. The high cost of fresh food remains substantial barriers to healthy food diets, particularly in remote communities where the average cost of a healthy food basket in 2021 was 52% higher than your normal supermarket. The impacts of colonisation are still high and still affecting Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people today. Transgenerational trauma has been passed down through generations with ongoing impacts on all aspects of life. For example, loss of culture, loss of identity, stolen generation, and forced displacement of country. Transgenerational trauma contributes to increased diabetes risk through several mechanisms, including poor mental health, social determinants of health, including structural, community level, and individual level racism. So this was also a common theme found in America. So we acknowledge that all people from all walks of life have different experiences, different cultures, and different traditions. We know that some diabetes related outcomes are better in people living in urban settings than those living in remote because of better access to health services. So these were some of the themes discussed by regions. There were commonalities across all regions. We also acknowledge that each region is different and comes with their own set of challenges. But it's really interesting that we've come together and we've all found that they're all very similar, just in different contexts. So just lastly, the second paper that Louise and I contributed to was about a solutions paper. So we were honoured that our partnership was included as a best practice case study of addressing diabetes inequities. Inequities. Right? In this paper, we developed conceptual frameworks to present these solutions, and our program was included in the category Changing the Ecosystem. It highlighted our ways of working in partnership with communities and raising the profile of voices of people with lived experience. You can also get these copies outside on our partnership table. Thank you.
Thank you both. Really important work. I'm glad that you could share it here, and I'm so glad you could share it in the US this year. It was fantastic. Next up, we have an exciting presentation by members of our team. So I'd like to welcome up Dr. Diana Mackay and Tara Diaz. So Diana is a clinical researcher within our partnership. She leads the Diabetes in Pregnancy project. And she's also an endocrinologist at the Royal Darwin Hospital, where she is the clinical lead of diabetes. And Tara is a senior research officer within our team, where she coordinates the Diabetes in Pregnancy co-design study. She has vast experience in community and organisational development, health policy, and consumer systemic advocacy. So without further ado, should I put them together? There we go. Thank you.
Hi everyone. I also would just like to acknowledge the Larrakia people as the traditional owners and pay my respects to their elders, as well as pay my respects to, as I realise people are dialing in from many different nations. And also just say a quick thank you to our lived experience speakers. As I guess from my perspective as a clinician researcher, it's immensely humbling to hear your stories and really reminds us about why we do what we're doing and the importance of centering what we're doing on those lived experiences. So thank you. So Tara and I are here to share some early findings from the partnership's current study, which is co-designing strategies to support the healthy lifestyles for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander women and communities. And as well as those findings, we're also going to share some reflections about the co-design process we've used. So Sian shared a little bit about this intergenerational story. We all know that there are very high rates of diabetes for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people across Northern Australia. And diabetes in pregnancy is playing a large role in this epidemic. That exposure to high blood sugar levels during pregnancy for the infant increases their risk of having a high birth weight and of then becoming overweight and developing diabetes themselves at a young age. If those infants are girls, this then increases the chance that they themselves will have diabetes already by the time they enter their childbearing years. And this cycle then continues. So there's an urgent need for us to take action to break this cycle. This really was the rationale behind the study we're talking about today, which aims to co-design a multi-component intervention to reduce these diabetes-related risks before, during and after pregnancy among Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander women and families. This is a multi-phase study, as you can see. So in part A, this is qualitative research where we hear those experiences from Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander women who've had diabetes in pregnancy, as well as hearing the perspectives of their family members and health professionals. Those findings from part A then inform part B, in which we undertake intensive community consultation with women, other community members and services, particularly health services. That consultation identifies priority issues and then potential strategies to address those issues. And in part C, we'll be implementing and evaluating those strategies. So our study is using a hybrid co-design methodology. It's informed by the principles of experience-based co-design, which places a priority on having the meaningful input from those people with lived experiences. The coloured outer circle shows the phases of experience-based co-design, and you can see in our diagram that women are placed at the centre and then encircled by their community and the services which they access. Our co-design methodology also incorporates First Nations research principles of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander leadership, prioritising the worldviews of Aboriginal women and adapting our study methods as appropriate, having genuine community engagement throughout the entire process, and ensuring that we remain cognisant of those impacts of social determinants of health and colonisation that we've all been discussing today. So this is our study team. This study is taking place across this study is taking place in the top end in Central Australia and Northern Territory and in Far North Queensland. So the study is in, I guess, different phases across the regions. In Far North Queensland, we're currently recruiting participants for that early qualitative research, while in both Northern Territory regions, we're nearing the end or have completed that consultative phase for part B. So the findings and reflections that we are sharing today are from the Northern Territory. So in part A, there have been 3 qualitative studies. All of them have had Sian playing an important role. The first was led by Renee and explored women's experiences and understanding of diabetes in pregnancy, as well as how care could potentially be improved. The second was led by Dr. Anna Wood and explored women's preferences for a program to reduce diabetes-related risks after pregnancy. And in the third, on which I collaborated with Sian as well as Sheree Mack, who's pictured on the right, we explored the supports for women during and after a pregnancy complicated by diabetes. And this slide summarises the key findings from each of those studies. So in the first, we found that women did have some understanding about diabetes in pregnancy, but that was often quite superficial. And there's really this unmet need to be able to provide information and education in ways that are culturally appropriate so we can have a depth of understanding. In the second study, women expressed that they really wanted programs like lifestyle programs rather than relying on medications to reduce diabetes-related risks postpartum, and also expressed that these programs needed to be culturally safe and appropriate to their local community. And in the third study, women identified family and health services as important sources of support, but also that there were multiple barriers to women really being able to gain the most benefit possible from these supports. Women spoke about the things that helped them to actually stay healthy during and after their pregnancies. These themes will be, I think, familiar to us, but included that strength of their connection to community and to their country. The fact that pregnancy is a really strong motivator as women want to give their children the best start to life. When women had a family member who had an experience of diabetes, that family member was a key source of support and information. And if women had a trusted relationship with a health professional, that was also highly valued. But we know, and we've already been discussing today, that there are many barriers. We've spoken already about food insecurity, and particularly in the remote setting, there's also a lack of facilities for women to be able to engage in physical activity. We know that women have many other things that they have to deal with in their lives, which means they can't always prioritise looking after their own health. And while family can be a great source of support, the opposite is also true. If family actually don't know much about diabetes and have some understanding, then that can make it difficult for the woman. And we've spoken today already also about silence and shame around diabetes, and that is definitely a barrier to women being able to access the supports that might otherwise be available. So I'm going to hand over to Tara now, who's going to talk about the next phase of the study.
Thanks, Diana. So part B is really about getting that strong community engagement and engagement from all of the participant groups to come to a consensus about what people want to do and what they want to co-design. In the NT, we had 2 sites, 53 participants. 28 of those participants were Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander women and community members, and we had 23 health professionals and community services professionals. Of the community members and the women, about 60% of those were people who had an experience of diabetes and pregnancy, or an experience in their family. So we worked with these participant groups through a series of workshops and interviews, and were able to draw out these priorities. I won't spend too much time on this because I think these are things that are not new to anybody in this room, and we've heard a lot about these things today. But just to draw out on that bottom point about the complexities of life challenges, and this is where really the social determinants of health impact women. And we heard women talking a lot about the difficulty of prioritizing their own well-being. And we had one participant who talked about, she felt like life in community was like a river, like she was swept up into the river and she'd crawl up the bank, go to the clinic. And then when her appointment was over, it was back into the river. So not having a chance to really take action on what she learned or what she discussed while in clinic. So now we're in the stage where we are moving from looking at what people said they wanted to do to actually implementing, which is really, really exciting. In Central Australia, the women there have come up with a concept that have really tied all of these priorities, and they want a women's group. So the aim of that women's group will be about teaching skills and confidence. There's really a strong theme that came through around connecting with culture and involving elders. And again, that element of peer support that we've heard about today. And that beautiful photo down there is some of the art that the women have been doing in preparation for that group. In the top end, we are a little bit farther behind. The engagement work in Central has been going for longer, but we are at a stage, and that's Norlisha and I, that we're working with the participant groups around all of the things that are really important to them. So you can see that those really fall in line with the priorities before, and we need to go through a process where we look at what's feasible and possible and what resources are available and make a plan. Of course, all of this is underlined by implementation considerations of sustainability, community ownership, and feasibility. Just going to speak quickly about some of the reflections and lessons. This has been a bit of a long process, and we still have a ways to go, so I don't want to be conclusive about this, but some of the things that we've learned before up to this point, I think just that bottom point about creating spaces to share stories. We know that lived experience cuts through like nothing else, and all of these other elements enable that. And I think especially the importance of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander leadership through this whole process. We are really lucky to have some investigators like Carla Canuto, Lisa McCarthy, Heather DeAntoine, and Sian Graham involved in this project. And we've had the ongoing advice of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander leadership group, reference group, Sian. And also we have that leadership within our team, and we've had fantastic support on the ground, including from people like Danila Hampton. So really grateful for that. The engagement and the collaboration are essential, and the contextual modifications. So that's the modifications we've made to the experience-based co-design approach. We don't have time to talk about that today, right now, but if anybody's interested, come and find Diana. We'll talk your ear off about what we've modified. Just to conclude about this little portion, the part B, is just that we can see that it is possible to incorporate First Nations participatory research principles into experience-based co-design, those principles being the importance of leadership, the importance of actually producing something of tangible benefit for the people we're working with, and that there is a strong alignment between what priorities we've found in each of the communities, and that, yeah, sustainability and community ownership are essential. You need to consider them from the beginning and have processes that support that. Acknowledgements, too many people to shout out by name, but there's so many people to thank, so thank you. How are we on time? Great. Oh, sorry, what did I do?
Thank you so much, Tara and Diana. Great presentation and a really nice highlight of some of the work that's happening in the diabetes and pregnancy space within the partnership. This brings us to a really exciting part of the program. Matt, Angela, Peggy, Auntie Margie, we are so excited to officially launch some of our diabetes resources that a number of many people actually have been working hard on over a couple of years. So if I can ask you to get the next presentation up and I can do some introductions. So if I could please ask Matt and Auntie Margie to come up, please. So Dr. Matt Hare is an endocrinologist at Royal Darwin Hospital, and he's also the clinical lead for remote services with the endocrinology department. He's a senior researcher fellow at Menzies and currently the lead investigator on multiple epidemiological and translation projects. And Auntie Margie is joining us from the Torres, and I'll get Matt to introduce you, Auntie Margie. And go for it. Keep to time, Matt.
Time's ticking. I'll try and go. Yeah, no worries. Yes, thanks so much for the introduction, and it's a real joy to be officially launching these videos. We have kind of been trickling them out a little bit in the last 6 weeks or so, but we'll look forward to sharing a bit more about it today. It's my really great pleasure to be presenting alongside Auntie Margaret Kiwat today. Auntie Margie has been working in midwifery care for more than 40 years now. She works at Torres and Cape Health and Hospital and Health Service based on Thursday Island, and has recently moved from doing mostly maternity ward work to back in outreach, so getting on helicopters is what they mostly use in the Torres Strait, and they cover a large territory. Auntie Margaret's got a lot of wisdom and insights into this. You might be a bit scary out there, so I'm going to mostly share a bit of some of the things we've been talking about. I'd encourage you, if you don't mind, have a chat at lunchtime about some of Auntie Margie's experiences. She originally trained in midwifery care here in the NT, actually. She came across for a year, leaving several children in the care of her sister in Cairns in the late 1970s, and trained out in remote East Arnhem Land, Tennant Creek and Katherine region, before travelling back to serve her community, so for so many decades. In terms of what the service looks like today, I've been provided with some notes about what the service on Thursday Island or Weyburn looks like. They've currently got 1 clinical midwife consultant, 6 MGP midwives, 5 core midwives, and 1 assistant in nursing, which is Auntie Margie. I think the title note. 1 assistant in midwifery, sorry. 1 assistant in nursing and 1 assistant in midwifery, which is Auntie Margie, which I think the title undersells your role and experience and wisdom. And there's some interesting reflections to be had about that. They've got a visiting endo service from Cairns and diabetes educators as well. They're the only birthing hospital for the Torres and Cape, and they service the NPA, or the North Peninsula area, including Bamaga, Numapoon, Cisa, Injinu and Umajigo. And there's a midwife based on the NPA Monday to Friday, and the outer islands, Darnley, also Erub, which is where Auntie Margie's originally from, Murray, Stephen, York, Yam, Coconut, Horn, Moa, Maboig, Hammond Island, which is where Shanoa Wapa, who's very involved in this video project, lives. Prince of Wales Island, which is where we got to stay when we were filming some of the videos, which is beautiful, because there's no space on the island, on Thursday Island. Bardu, Duan, Sabai and Boigu. They do outreach once a month to all these islands for midwifery care. They've got a dietitian who provides telehealth and outreach visits to MPA in the outer islands. They've currently got 104 pregnancies on their MGP caseload. 8 have type 2 diabetes and 9 have gestational diabetes, 5 of which were diagnosed in early pregnancy. So roughly this is about 1 in 6 of their pregnant women currently have diabetes, and all of those are First Nations women. In my conversations with Auntie Margaret over the last few days and previously in visits out on Thursday Island, I've learnt a lot, and I'm very grateful for the privilege of that. One thing I just wanted to share today, I think, was just some of the comments around some of the barriers going forward, and I guess the things for us, next generation, to be picking up the fight on. And one of those is around, Auntie Margaret described it as that Torres Strait Islander women don't have permission to put a hand on the belly anymore. There's this barrier to qualifications and accreditation that means that local people are less involved in healthcare delivery, because you need to travel somewhere to get your certificate and qualifications and registration. And that experience of working on the ground and delivering healthcare for many, many years is under-recognised, and that training on the job, on country, and how important that is. So that's something for us to all kind of to take from here. So with that long introduction, thanks so much, Auntie Margie, for your involvement in this. Auntie Margie is one of our narrators in one of the videos and is heavily involved in that. You're welcome to stand here the whole time or have a seat. Up to you, Auntie Margie.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm very grateful for the previous presentation, for giving some of the background to the formative work, which really inspired this implementation project. So I won't go through all that again, but essentially, really, there's a lot of conversations, Sian, Renee and I and others within the Diabetes Partnership team back in 2019 around the fact we've been hearing a lot this message that we need to develop resources that were culturally safe and appropriate, and they need to be co-designed. And so we put in a small grant, got a little bit of money. Then we decided that actually we started doing some consultation, realised that a little bit of money isn't enough to do stuff properly. It costs a lot of money and takes a long time. And I'm not going to go through all this of what the project has looked like to date and will continue to look like into the future, but our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander advisory group were keen that we share the story of the complexity of doing these things well, and that often as clinicians we have our ideas that we just want to, I'll just make a resource about this, I'll just make a little pamphlet or make a video. You'd be surprised how many times in the last 3 or 4 years people have said, oh, I want to make a video about this, can you help me, Matt? I'm just like, oh, I'm pretty tired actually from this. It's a huge amount of work to do things well, and it's if we want to be impactful, we need to take that time. Sian's got some great stories around her own experiences, which if we had more time, I would have invited her to share, about being handed a whole bag of pamphlets on diagnosis of diabetes during pregnancy that I think are they still in your cupboard, or have you thrown them out finally? But, no, I think it's to just do the spring clean. They've gone, but they were never looked at. So we had a fairly in-depth consultation process for these development of these videos. The Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander advisory group of our partnership had a really key governance role over all aspects. And many of them are here today, so thank you so much. Sian was employed in the project a couple of days a week for a year as well in the early stages, and had a really essential role in providing that lived experience lens into the communication strategy and the message development, and all the messages and the communication strategy were also workshopped with the advisory group. I think we've probably met to talk about it about 6 or 8 times over the last few years. So I appreciate all that time and investment. Renee and I ran a focus group back in maybe 2019 with a group of young Aboriginal people from the Northern Territory around resources and learning about health conditions, just to get their feedback. We showed them a number of different formats of different videos, animations, lived experience videos, and got some really key insights from that. I won't go through them all today. And then throughout the process of making the videos, we've continued to do focus groups with women with lived experience of diabetes and pregnancy, and to yarn with people one-on-one to get feedback into what these resources should look like. And really the feedback has been that things have to be locally and regionally specific. They have to privilege the voices of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander women with lived experience if we're going to cause any impact. We also had more than 30 health professionals across various disciplines who contributed to message development, and all up, I added up, there's 45 Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people involved, which is amazing. I won't go through my... So what have we produced? Essentially, we produced a set of 8 messages about diabetes and pregnancy. So these are educational resources for consumers, essentially. I see this as an aid to face-to-face care, and often as a conversation starter, perhaps. It doesn't provide all the information that people need to know, but it's freely available online. Each video just goes for about 2 or 3 minutes, with strong feedback from young people that anything beyond that, no matter how well produced it was, some of the RHD videos had amazing music and great cinematography, but if it hit 3 minutes, it's too long. So we cover those topics, just an overview of GDM, which is perhaps useful for people when they're first diagnosed, or even for women wwho need to do the OGTT and want to know what it's all about and how it's done. That's a useful video to watch. And then specific ones about metformin or insulin, preparing for baby's arrival, and then postpartum care for GDM and type 2 diabetes. So specific resources that can be used not in one go, but at different time points along that journey. To date, we've produced videos in Torres Strait Islander Creole. We've got an English video set for Torres Strait Islander women and an English video set for Aboriginal women. At the moment, the only one launched on our website is the Aboriginal women video set, but we'll hopefully have the Torres Strait Islander ones up online next week. Very, very close. Got the final edits, last night, which is just not quite in time for today, sorry. And we've filmed the narration in Warlpiri and Central Arranger as well, and looking to film some lived experience videos in language as well, and they'll be the next 2 that we work on, subject to funding. So there's some of our happy snaps from filming up in Cairns in the Torres Strait and Thursday Island. It was a real privilege to have that time up there, and then also in the Katherine region, in multiple communities, Timber Creek, Yarralin, Kalkarinji, were very supportive, and Alice Springs as well. So I'm going to share a couple of videos with you, hope that's okay. We'll share 2, one from the Torres Strait and one from the NT.
This video is about type 2 diabetic for women who are pregnant or planning on having a baby. More and more young women have been diagnosed with type 2 diabetic before they get pregnant. Even you feel okay, treating diabetic before and during pregnancy, it's important. It's important to check your blood sugar level before you get pregnant. And when you're pregnant, because it is your blood sugar level are too high, this can make mom and Bob sick. My name is Chantal Leopold. I'm from Cairns, and I have type 2 diabetes. Part of preparing for pregnancy, was just making sure I have some really good numbers. And then once I did fall pregnant, it was adjusting them again, working with the hospital and my doctors to make sure I kept those numbers under control. If you take medication for diabetic and when you get pregnant, the doctor might change your medication. Metformin and insulin are okay, but some other medication are not good for baby. You should also take vitamin tablets that help baby grow strong and healthy. I do take supplement. I was advised to take some folic acid and also iron. They were the main two that I've been taking. When you are diabetic, the blood sugar level often get higher as Baba grow. You might need more medication. Sometimes women need insulin, needle, even if they only need a tablet before. So the insulin dosage since falling pregnant has gone significantly higher than what I would have normally taken without being pregnant. And then I find after pregnancy, it changes again significantly. I find that I have more hypo, which doesn't often happen. And then it's just readjusting. So it's a constant work in progress. Things you can do help keep you and your baby healthy include having healthy food and drinking a lot of water, no sugary drink like soft drink or cordial. Keep active like walking or rake up the yard and doing a blood sugar check and taking your medication. Having diabetes can be hard work, but when managing properly, you can still have an healthy pregnancy and baby. If you are worried about diabetic, blood sugar level or medication, no same. Come talk to your healthcare team.
A big thank you to Auntie Margie, who's our narrator there, and thanks to Torres and Cape Hospital and Health Service and Cairns and Hinterland Hospital and Health Service, particularly Cairns Diabetes Centre for their support in making that one. I'll show you, check my timer, I think we've got time. We'll quickly show you one video from the NT, and this is an overview of GDM.
This video is about gestational diabetes, or GDM. GDM is a type of diabetes that some women get when pregnant. Most of the time, if you have GDM, you feel okay. But if your sugar are too high, this can make your baby sick.
I was only about 8 weeks pregnant that I found out that I was diabetic. When I first found out that I was diagnosed with that, it started to make me feel a bit sad about it, you know. How come I'm like this? And yeah, it was a bit stressful. So I started to talk to diabetes education work, start working with them in the hospital, either back at home, how to keep up with my medication. Yeah, and then I got used to it and I was all right.
When you are pregnant, you will be asked to do a blood test to check if you have GDM. The best way to check for diabetes is the sugar drink test, often called as the oral glucose tolerance test, or OGTT.
I found out I was diabetic when I was pregnant. They gave me a little bottle with sugar thing to drink and blood test. They made me stay in the clinic for 1 hour or 2 hours.
On the day that you are going to do the sugar drink test, when you wake up in the morning, come to the clinic before you have any tucker or anything to drink. Just a little bit of water is okay. Your nurse or health practitioner will do the first blood test, then you drink a small bottle of the sweet drink. Over the next 2 hours that you are waiting in the clinic, the nurse or health practitioner will take 2 more blood tests. After the 2 hours, you can then eat and drink. The good news is that having healthy food and drinks, move your body every day, and taking medication from the clinic can help keep you and your baby healthy.
You just gotta eat healthy, like fruit and that, not junks, not drinking cordial and coke. A lot of exercise and a lot of water. try and look after myself, ask my body, I don't have a body, we're gonna try and be healthy inside.
Looking after gestational diabetes or GDM can be hard work, but the clinic mob are ready to work together with you so you can have a healthy, strong baby.
Sorry. A huge thank you to all the people involved in those videos. The ones for Aboriginal women, the NT, are available on the website now. I'm hoping to have the other two video sets up next week. If you want to scan the QR code, you can access the website where they are. We've also got posters and some business card size flyers for handing out to patients and things that we can distribute to your health service. Just ask them if you want some. So I just want to have a huge thank you to everyone involved in these projects. As I said, it's been a massive effort of a number of people. Particular thanks to Catherine West Health Board, who contributed a lot, both cash and time and staff. We had 6 Catherine West Health staff coming out bush with us for a week with the film crew, which is amazing and a great experience, a real privilege. Holly Caden, I don't know if she's online today or in the room, shared to me one day when we're driving along the road together. This has been one of the highlights of her career. Holly's a very experienced diabetes educator working in remote NT, and I'd agree. I think this has been probably the highlight of my career working on this project, just the opportunity to sit with women and just yarn about their personal experiences and hear firsthand has really shaped my practice as a doctor, and yeah, it's been a real privilege. So thank you to all the partners, the film crew from Moogie Down Productions, Kim McHugh, very grateful for all that. So thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Now I just wanted to introduce Dr. Angela Titmuss, who is a paediatric endocrinologist and paediatrician at the Royal Darwin Hospital and also a senior research fellow with us here at Menzies School of Health Research. She's her work within the partnership is focused around youth type 2 diabetes. So we're really grateful to have Angela on the team. And we've also got Peggy Tom, who is a community liaison officer within our youth type 2 diabetes team here in the partnership. And since joining the team, Peggy's made significant contributions through her connections with young people across Darwin and our surrounding areas, as well as having a lot of long engagement and making meaningful contributions from your community relationships and partnerships. So without any further talk from me, it would be great to hear from you on the Youth Type 2 resource launch.
Yes, it's a great pleasure to be able to launch this kind of suite of resources today. And just to give a bit of a background, so this is an Commonwealth Government funded project from 2019 to 2023. So right over COVID period, which brought some challenges in getting this to happen, and led by Louise and Renee. And it's part of a bigger project, which we'll talk briefly about this afternoon, about co-design of youth-friendly, culturally appropriate models of care for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children and youth with type 2 diabetes. And I have to say, for the health professionals in the room, I know that the need for youth relevant and culturally appropriate resources, multimedia resources, was identified from the very, very first conversations. And so it's been a long process to get to this point. And I know that that's been something that people have been asking for a long time. So we're very glad to actually be able to finally deliver these. And it was a long co-design process across the regions. And so to who's been involved, there's young people from the top end, Central Australia, Kimberley and Far North Queensland, been in interviews, focus groups and co-design workshops throughout the process. Thank you to the many health professionals that have been involved across all of those regions as well, in interviews, as well as in working groups and providing feedback throughout the process. The family members and community members from all, community workers from all the regions and the health services that have been involved, again, through interviews, focus groups and co-design. And we have been very lucky in the Youth Type 2 project to have had 6 Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community liaison officers, young people that have been employed by the project, and they've provided very essential guidance, co-design and ongoing input to these resources. So what is now available, and Peggy will actually introduce them, is that we have one music video which was created by youth in Central Australia. We have 18 lived experience and narrative videos which share the experience of First Nations youth across Northern Australia and the diversity of those experiences of type 2 diabetes across those regions. There's 11 educational videos which relate to different topics for youth onset type 2 diabetes. So some topics such as understanding diabetes, differences to adult onset diabetes, how to monitor blood glucose levels and various medications. And then we have 4 animated videos which use analogies to explain what type 2 diabetes is, hopefully in a way that's more relevant to young people. And just before I head over to Peggy, so our resources are available on the Diabetes Across the Life course website as well. And if you click on there, then you'll be able to find, not all of them are available at the moment, but in the next week or so, they should all be there.
Thank you, Angela. I hope I do find them resourceful as well, as I'm a type 2 diabetic myself. So the first one is, it's a music video. This music video was the outcome of a series of workshops with young people in Alice Springs, led by local hip hop artist Carnage. It aims to reduce diabetes stigma and promote the message that you can live well with type 2 diabetes. The song speaks to the importance of culture and working together to keep young people healthy, happy, and connected.
Sugar is hot, and you feel low, don't step back. I take it slow, take you down, talk to diabetes, don't be ashamed. We can work together, come and change. If you sugar is hot, and you feel low, don't step back. I take it slow, take you down, talk to diabetes, don't be ashamed. We can work together, come and change.
My name is Mack, I like to be a Mack. Straight from T3 is where I wanna be. Going hunting, being healthy. No type 2 diabetes for me. The bar is sweet. I'm driving with my car. I'm coming from Catholic with my record with my boss. I'm telling you the way if you wanna make a change. If you got type 2 diabetes, don't be ashamed. I can see you wanna live the race and break the face. You wanna keep up the pace that beats you with the face. You wanna go up to the land with the bush shot too. You wanna ride a bush, you go hunt for kangaroo. So you live the happy way like an ancestor said. Turn up to a man to a young little kid. You run around the block, pick up the fresh hair. Stop you can see me with the rhythm. I'm singing with the thoughts in my lane. It gives me the help I need. The more type 2 diabetes for me, yeah.
Sugar is hot, and you feel low, don't step back. I take it slow, take you down, talk to diabetes, don't be ashamed. We can work together, come and change. If you sugar is hot, and you feel low, don't step back. I take it slow, take you down, talk to diabetes, don't be ashamed. We can work together. Take it easy on the sugar, bro. Large chocolate possible, yo, it's too much. Exercise, rock, play footy on the side. Stay strong, and your family gonna be alright. Live long and happy life. Type 2 diabetes, easy to maintain, but more to prevent. So take my word for it and listen to what I say. Listen to what I say.
Yeah, we need to change our thinking, change the way we live, change the way we eating, change the way we drinking. So many else of sicknesses straight through our age nutrition. You wanna make a difference, get back to that ancient wisdom. Before takeaway, before pop the soda, before they started processing the food so we can store it longer. There was no diabetes, there was no obesity. People lived off the land until only what they need.
If your sugar's high and you feel low, take a step back and take it slow. You got type 2 diabetes, don't be shy. We do it together and make a change. If your sugar's high and you feel low, don't step back. I take it slow, take you down, talk to diabetes, don't be ashamed. We can work together, come and change. If your sugar's high and you feel low, don't step back. I take it slow, take you down, talk to diabetes, don't be ashamed. We can work together, come and change.
There are 11 educational videos covering covering various aspects of youth onset type 2 diabetes, including some on different medications.
Sometimes you don't even know you have diabetes because we can't see the sugar inside our body. Some people start to feel really tired and sleepy, feel thirsty, become grumpy, get skin sores, or have to go to the toilet a lot. Some people notice darker and thicker skin over their neck or underarms. Often, people think these skin changes are dirt, but it is actually a sign that your blood sugar levels are too high. It is important to catch type 2 diabetes early so that you can help the body get back to working properly and to grow up strong. Finding out someone has type 2 diabetes as soon as possible and looking after it well with the right food and drinks, staying active, and having medicine if needed will help keep the body healthy and strong for their whole life. It means that the blood won't be sticky and there will not be damage in the kidneys, heart, feet, eyes, or brain. If you have worries about diabetes, blood sugar checks or medicine, don't be ashamed. Talk to the mob at the clinic. Talk to your family. Lots of people want to help. A big part of reducing your chance of getting type 2 diabetes is focusing on living a healthy life. This includes eating lots of fresh fruit and vegetables, as well as meat that doesn't have too much fat, and drinking plenty of water. It is important to not have too many sugary drinks. This includes soft drink, fruit juice, sports drinks, and flavoured milks. Also try to avoid lots of salty foods. Doing exercise or sport every day is really important. This can include playing footy with your friends, dancing, walking, riding bikes, or running around.
There are 4 animated videos explaining diabetes using different analogies: fishing, termites, lock and key, and cleaning the house.
One way to understand diabetes is to think about it like cleaning a house. Imagine if one day you walked into your house and there was rubbish covering all of the floor. What would you do? The first thing you might do is to grab a broom, sweep up all the rubbish you can, and put it in the bin. However, after doing all of this sweeping, the floor is still dirty. It has dust and dirt that the broom can't clean. Now you fill up a bucket of water and grab a mop to clean the floor. Most of the time, the broom and mop with water are enough to clean the floor. Sometimes the floor might be sticky and have some tough stains that the water just won't clean. Now you need to add some Pino Clean or detergent to the water to remove these stubborn stains for a clean floor. Finally, you have a nice clean house that you can enjoy. The house is like your body. The rubbish is the sugar, and the broom and the mop are like the medicines we use in diabetes. Some people can keep the rubbish clean using just the broom, metformin. Other people also need a mop, insulin, or other medicines. Exercise every day is like the detergent. It makes the medicines work better in cleaning up the rubbish. When you drink sugary drinks like soft drinks and juice, it's like tipping the rubbish out from the bin and all over the floor again, making it all dirty again. Don't undo your hard work in taking medicines and exercising by tipping the rubbish back over the floor. Look after your body by keeping your house clean and tidy.
There are 18 videos highlighting the stories of young people with type 2 diabetes from across the Kimberley, the NT, and far north Queensland.
My name is Reu Tayloraye Bailey. My mob is Milo people. Like in 2019, that's when I felt dizzy. That's when I normally go to a Lamadina clinic. And then I heard one of the nurses say that I have a
diabetes. So I didn't know what diabetes was, and then until I explained what is it, I felt shame, afraid, and I thought like I was man. So until people tell me like explain how can I get rid of this thing. So yeah. In my life is people talk to me a lot about it, even tell me to come hospital rounds, lots of talks, different people, doctor, diabetes people to talk to. I felt different, like I got used to it. I just keep doing whatever I do to put the diabetes low, so I just go for a walk, play basketball, hang out with friends, and then drink lots of water and take the medicines, going fishing, catching a banana, fish that's stingray, and then sometimes walk in a creek hunting for crab, we call it. Every time I catch them, I bring it to the families, and sometimes good exercise to walk on a mud to use your muscle legs, use your arm for throwing stuff, picking up stuff. If you keep doing them things to put it low, it'll be better for you. At home, we try to cook different food to smoke better, so yeah. But sometimes there's no good food there, just buy some little munchies from the shop, maybe like little week time. Yeah. But when I cook like good food with veggies, and then maybe we leave it stronger. Small meat, small rice with lots of little veggies. But they cook other food for their family, so sometimes they put veggies, vegetables in it for me only, and water. When I see all the other family junk food and coke, so that I don't stress that way. I just get that mind like that. Because when I was feeling stressed and mad, and then when these good people talk to me, I just learn from them, and they tell me to do all the good stuff that they do. And listen to them. They help me. Yeah, I feel better physically, and then yeah, strong. But my dream is to have a house of my own, do exercise every day, and then get a job too. If I feel alone, then I just go meet families, and I just tell family to come over. So yeah. I aim to stay strong, healthy, and active with the support from family, friends, community, and clinic.
All the videos are currently only in English, but we hope to receive more feedback after they start being used, and then seek further grants to enable translation into multiple languages.
I just forgot to mention we do have a QR code as well, and if you're interested, there's little business cards outside that you could pick up that will link you.
Wonderful, thank you. And just a big congratulations once again to everybody that's been involved in the development and production of all of these resources. We do hope that you can access them in your practice and share them with people who may benefit from the content. Next, we have Batwoman. No, not quite. I was hoping Mary might wear a Batwoman t-shirt today, but she let me down. That's all right. We can forgive you for that, Mary. No, seriously, Dr. Mary Wicks, it's a pleasure to have you here today. Mary is a specialist physician based in Alice Springs. She has been heavily involved in providing specialist care to both urban and remote Aboriginal people in the NT since 2012. Currently, Mary works in the Pintabee Homelands Health Service in Kintore and provides specialist clinics to the Central Australian Aboriginal Health Congress in Alice Springs, and she's currently completing her PhD within the partnership with a focus on Pandora. Mary's going to be talking about racial microaggressions. I'm very excited to hear what you have to say, Mary.
It's a bit of a hard act to follow. There's been so much positive energy in the room. But I stand here with humility and a sense of responsibility as a remote healthcare worker, and the way that we can or cannot mediate sort of racism intentionally or unintentionally. So I'd like to acknowledge first, which button do I? Sorry about that. Oh, there he is. So I again acknowledge we're meeting on the ancestral lands of the Larrakia people. Also, I work and live on the lands of the Central Aranda people. And this research was conducted on the Pintabee and Namadra people's land. I pay my respects to leaders past, present and emerging. I've had a quick introduction. I'm well aware of the time. We're running a bit late. But just to mention my co-authors in this research, Dr. Christine Hampshire, a senior medical practitioner who worked at Docker River for about 15 years. Miss Jeannie Campbell, who's a senior Aboriginal health practitioner with NT Health and works at Tea Tree Clinic. And our esteemed members of the Menzies School of Health Research, Louise and Renee. The context I won't go through because we're well aware of the state of diabetes in the Northern Territory, but in particular in Central Australia. Obviously, communication is central to any therapeutic relationship, and especially in chronic condition management. I've been involved in remote area work as a remote area nurse and then later as a doctor for more than 25 years, and aware over that time the talk of health workers can be very stereotypical or dualistic. And it started me thinking about how that might mediate racism. So even though some of this data I'll present may not look too serious, but I think we've had ample evidence today that both covert and overt racism are harmful. There has been some recent research across Australia where 58% of Indigenous people reported having experienced racism in the last 12 months. In Central Australia, that was about 71%. And I'm sorry to say, that's probably a lot higher if you took it today, given the recent referendum. I was very moved by Noel Pearson's Boyer lecture last year, where he talked about Aboriginal people being a much unloved people and perhaps the ethnic group Australians feel least connected to. That's extremely sad, but I'm sorry, the referendum seems to have proven that this is likely the case across Australia. I need my, I don't know, sorry, I've lost the notes. The recent outgoing Human Rights Commissioner has mentioned that racism is actually a massive problem. He actually said this before the referendum vote was out. So it's certainly on the agenda, and I've noticed certainly a lot more in the last year or so. It's becoming a lot more forefront in our own work. Okay. Racism. Are you racist? Is it a yes or no question? We're well aware of what we might call overt racism. That's often what we see and worry about, but we really may not be picking up that there's the bigger part of racism is actually covert. We've talked today about institutional systemic racism, but today I'm looking more at interpersonal racism. We've also looked at internalised racism and how that affects people in their stories today. So covert racism may be called everyday racism, or there is a methodology of categorisation of racial microaggressions, which we used in our study. So the concept of race, which has already been mentioned today, has been discredited by anthropologists and geneticists, but racism itself can be inscribed on the body in those people who are racialised. So in First Nation Australian people, these prevalence ratios were reported in one of the papers I just quoted. So people have significantly increased social emotional wellbeing issues, pain and depression, anxiety, issues with dependence in alcohol and cigarette smoking, but it also has metabolic effects. So it's associated with higher rates of type 2 diabetes, heart disease, hypertension and high cholesterol. And this study that was done by Thurber, it seemed the increasing discrimination exposure is actually related to increasing prevalence of these conditions. So it's a dose response. So racial microaggressions have been studied, and mostly in the Black literature in the United States. But I'll just point out, just define what it might be. I call it sort of racism by 1,000 cuts. And knowing the experiences of some of my friends, I can see how that works in the day-to-day. But they're commonplace verbal or behavioural indignities, whether they're intentional or not, which communicate hostile, derogatory or negative racial slights and insults. So there are sort of 4 different ways you can sort of look at this. I haven't got time to go through all that. But this has been well categorised, the type of microaggressions in these sort of different areas. We have published this paper about 6 months ago, so it is available. But in this study, we aim to recognise racial microaggressions in the everyday discourse of healthcare workers working in remote Central Australian clinics. We had semi-structured interviews with 14 healthcare workers from 2 health services, one of which was an NT government service and one was a community controlled health service. The majority of these were remote area nurses, but a significant number of also remote medical practitioners and 2 Aboriginal health practitioners. I'll just put where we are. So the Pintabee people out in Kintul were involved in this study, the nurses out there, and the area around Tea Tree with the Mudgera people. So I'll just go through a few examples of how this plays out. So looking at this particular category, stereotyping is very, very common. And just using some quotes, you know what they're like, you know, when nurses are conferring together, often in the veranda with a smoke or something, you know what they're like. So stereotyping that sort of uses collusion to suggest that all Aboriginal people are the same in their behaviours and choices. One of the Aboriginal health practitioners was well aware that nurses were talking about her and her colleagues, and they were sort of primed up before they met them. You know what they're like, you know, they're Aboriginal people, and they were the only ones who had to sign in and out of the clinic in terms of time. So this health worker was saying they basically didn't have the opportunity to represent themselves as individuals to new remote area staff at that clinic. And then a common one, why don't they care about their health? You know, so implies basically all Aboriginal people are the same and that their behaviours are basically saying they don't care about their health, which runs counter to very much what we hear today. And very commonly, they're poor historians, non-compliant and non-communicative. That particular one was usually after night duty in a hospital. But this issue about non-compliant, I'm sure you all resonate with that. So any words that use sort of they and them are sort of little red flags to stereotyping. So, you know, whenever I hear that in a sentence, my sort of ears prick up and I think, oh. And then you listen to the next bit and, you know, it's often a stereotyping type of talk. A more disturbing one is blaming culture for ill health and people's behaviours. It's well known that culture is actually protective for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, but it was very common to attribute poor health status and behaviours based on culture. And this sort of brought into this theme of that Aboriginal people are dependent. In other words, this nurse was saying, I think they're a lot more dependent in Community X. Some people kind of expect us to be at their beck and call. The interviewer asking, do you think that's a cultural thing or a personal thing? Oh no, I think it's cultural. So culture, one nurse said, culture hinders health for a large number of people. And then this other very common theme that Aboriginal people don't care about their health in the same way that we do, because they're so nomadic. They just sort of go from one place to another and they lose that momentum. Then there were sort of comments about intelligence of Aboriginal people, or competence or status. This was a remote area nurse talking about an Aboriginal health practitioner, you know, that they're just directed to go and drive the car. They're not encouraged to work to their full potential, so they don't. So this comment sort of basically saying Aboriginal people lack agency and certainly weren't given equal status as health care practitioners in remote areas. And then one ran was saying, do Aboriginal people know what they want? I think here the people don't really know what they want. So again, you know, presuming Aboriginal people lack agency over their desires and actions. And then this was related by a remote practitioner about from a healthcare worker from migrant background who expressed horror that Aboriginal people aren't making better of their circumstances, implying Aboriginal people lack a certain intelligent motivation or capacity to make improvements. So they're all quite concerning sort of ways of seeing people. And I just asked Auntie Margie if I could relate what we were talking about this morning while we were waiting for our taxi not to come. And she related the story of 3 women who had presented to the hospital in late stages of labour, basically telling the staff, look, I'm just about to have a baby, who were all turned away. And one ended up having a baby in a taxi. The other one had a baby in the foyer of the motel, and one in the courtyard of the motel. So very classic story. You know, how would those women know? You know, so a wiser sort of white person was basically saying, no, love, don't worry. You know, how would you know? So undermining their own competence as women. An interesting one is false colour blindness. So an example being one of the remote nurses was very keen to tell me, I don't see colour. I always treat everyone the same. Doesn't matter what colour, which sounds egalitarian and as if it's come out of a place of equality, but it really undermines the notion of equity, which means giving people what they need. So by not seeing colour also invalidates issues and racism that people of colour may actually experience. This is a more concerning one. So one of the communities, the last massacre known in Australia was actually at Coniston, which is near the Tea Tree community. And there were up to 200 Aboriginal people who were murdered there. So we were talking about that, and then one of the nurses sort of said, oh yes, but there's a lot of sad things with white fellas too. So this sort of, you know, functions to invalidate or normalise this intergenerational suffering of Aboriginal people at that particular area. None of the nurses over this area actually knew anything about this massacre, which the Tea Tree communities there and all those red marked places are actually where people were murdered at that time. And who would know that on the $2 coin, the one surviving member of that massacre has actually been on our coin for many, many years, which I must say I was sad to know that I didn't know, but it was actually related to that massacre. The other thing it's been playing a lot in Alice Springs is the criminality of Aboriginal people. You know, they're an inherently dangerous and criminal sort of people. So one new remote nurse was advised by the people in town who were orientating her, avoid relationships with Aboriginal people. Don't be friends. You're only there to provide a service. So you can't imagine her being saying, well, don't, you know, with those other nurses, don't be friends. Another nurse was talking about being really scared because they were coming to your house. It was all ours. It was very scary. But this fear was actually more related to the Aboriginal person's colour rather than non-Aboriginal people who had the same behaviours. In Alice Springs at the moment, it's dying down a little bit, but if you've been keeping an eye on the media, it's been very clear that we see Aboriginal people and Aboriginal youth as inherently dangerous and running amok, and that their parents are highly negligent. And I just put this in because I enjoy the cartoon, but Aboriginal people are threatening tourism in Central Australia because they've come to see the real Australia. Not anyhow, don't scare the tourists. So just in conclusion, racism isn't a binary. I think it's on a spectrum. And I think we all somehow fit on that spectrum, and I claim to do so as well. When we try to spend energy defending ourselves as not racist, it robs us of the capacity to listen with openness to others, to examine our own cultural biases and white superiority, and to think critically about the systems of which we are a part. So in conclusion, racial microaggressions are common in the talk of remote healthcare workers. They may be unaware that they're inflicting microaggressions, but that does not mitigate the damage that they can cause to Aboriginal people. And as health professionals, we need to challenge this sort of type of talk when we notice it, and aim to provide a culturally safe environment. And just be aware that the us and them sort of talk is a red flag for dualistic thinking and usually stereotyping of the other or Aboriginal people. I do believe we need a lot more in our orientation and cultural programs in terms of helping healthcare workers to sort of engage in critical reflexivity, especially in regard to power relations and understanding the impact of their own culture on and assumptions about other people's culture and the impact that can have. Have I got 1 minute? No. Okay. Sorry, that's it.
Thank you, Mary. As always, very powerful, but also very sobering. And I hope that it creates or helps people